Howdy, Immortalium here, and today I'm reviewing the Little Norse Prince, also known as Little Norse Prince Valiant, and also known as Hal's Princess's Son. So, before I start talking about the film itself, let me just give you some interesting facts. First of all, this was the directorial debut of Isao Takahata. Now, if you're not familiar with who Isao Takahata is, Isao Takahata went on to co-found Studio Ghibli. And he directed several Studio Ghibli films. His most famous being Grave of the Fireflies, but he also directed Only Yesterday, Pompoko, My Name is Giamada's, and the most recent Studio Ghibli film, Princess Kaguya. The other thing I want to point out about this is its age. This film comes from 1968, making it the oldest anime I own. Older than even the Lupin films, which were my previous oldest films. They were in 1970. But this takes the cake. 1968, that was when it was released. And it started production before then. Now, how does the film itself hold up? Well, because of its age, there's several points to bring up. So, let's just start off with the story. So what is the story of Little Norse Prince? Well, we encounter our lead character, Hals, which is the character you can see on the box. And Hals is being chased... The film starts out with Hals being chased through the mountains by a pack of wolves, and he climbs onto a rock, to get protection from the wolves. But the rock actually turns out to be a part of a stone giant. Now, Hal starts talking to the stone giant, and turns out the stone giant has what he calls a thorn. But Hals climbs up, and it turns out there's actually a sword buried deep in the stone giant. So Hals pulls it out. Turns out the sword is the Sword of the Sun, and is the only weapon that can defeat this devil guy, this kind of a great evil called Grunwald. And he then also finds out from his father that Grunwald destroyed his village when he was young, when he was just a baby. And basically Hals goes off, sets off on an adventure to defeat Grunwald, to find a new village to settle down in, etc, etc. So, essentially what you end up with is an adventure film. He goes off, he, encounters interesting people, he gets into battles, etc, etc, and he must eventually confront this great evil. And it's a story you've all seen before, and it's not particularly original, but it is well executed, in fairness. My biggest problem with the story, besides its unoriginality, is really the fact that there's a few pacing issues. This film is only about 80 minutes long, and there is a lot packed into it. A lot of set pieces, whether it's Hals having to face this giant fish, to, a pack of wolves invading a village. There's a lot happening in this film. And it just feels like, everything's too packed in. There's no breathing space. There's no chance to kind of relax from one moment to the other, which I found uncomfortable. I would have preferred, like, if this film was even just 10 minutes longer, just to put in some kind of small moments, just to allow the audience to relax, to catch their breath, to kind of understand what's happening, and to understand some people better, and where characters are as well. What can be a bit jarring is when a character, has only just left the village, and then all of a sudden he's all the way over in who knows where, it just feels, whoa, wait, where has the time gone? So, I think that could have been handled a little better, but overall the story is well executed. It's a very enjoyable story, you have some great villains, some great characters. It's enjoyable overall, and that's the main thing to say about the story. The characters are, engaging as well. Again, they're not particularly original. You have your lead character, Hals, who is, your kind of a spunky lead character. He wants revenge for, what's happened, and he wants to save the world. But he's also a nice guy. He wants to help people out, etc, etc. You have your villain, Grunwald, who we don't actually see that much of, I will confess. We kind of see more of his machinations, his plans, and, his minions, rather than himself. But Grunwald is a fine villain. I would kind of like to have known a bit more of his motivation. Because I don't think we ever really saw why he was committing all these acts. you know, what his final goal was. Not even world domination, just kind of what his goal is, you know. But he serves his purpose quite well. There is a love interest that Hals comes across, Hilda. And Hilda is a bit of a mixed character for me. Hilda, she has an interesting backstory. She's a conflicted character. But some of the decisions she makes are a bit questionable, is how I'd put it. And I think maybe if we just saw more of that conflict, that inner conflict of hers, it would kind of make it a bit more understandable why she does certain actions, which is again where I'd like the extended runtime to have come from. But the cast of characters are charming. The other thing I better point out about the characters is that there are some talking animals in this, which I guess is kind of a standard for old animated films. You have this bear companion for Hals, you know, you have a squirrel companion and an owl companion for Hilda, and they talk. Although I don't recall anyone else actually talking to the animals properly besides Hals and Hilda, so I don't know if it was just specifically them who could communicate with the animals or whether other people could. I'm assuming other people could, just we didn't see them do that. Now the animation, which is one of the most interesting things to talk about with this film. Back then, this was made by Toei Animation. Toei Animation would go on to make, you know, Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, Digimon, etc., etc. They're a big animation studio. But back then, they mainly made films, and each film of theirs would take about 8 months to make. This film, it was meant to be made in 8 months. It was extended to 3 years and had far more money than was expected put into it. And eventually, the studio just said, you know, to hell with it, we're just going to release this film. So, the problem then is that this film is a bit unfinished. It's not unfinished story-wise, but the animation, there's some errors in it. And what do I mean by that? There's a couple of bits where the characters are kind of over here, and they suddenly kind of move over there. Like a few skipped pieces of animation. There's also like a major battle scene where the wolves are invading a village, and it's completely like still images, you know, single frames, and the camera kind of moving across it, or you know, and it's just kind of jarring. You'd like to see some, you know, animation there. But that said, this film actually has a lot more animation in it than, you know, normal anime. Basically, okay, take this statistic. So, Princess Mononoke is over 2 hours long, and it has about 133,000 cells in it of animation, which is very high for an anime film. Little Norse Prince is 80 minutes long, has about 190,000 cells of animation. So, this film has actually a lot more animation in it than most anime. There's some bits of it where it gets kind of questionable, it's unfinished, but it is a fascinating film to look at. It's also fascinating from the perspective that it's kind of, it's old anime look. It's got visually, from an artistic perspective, like the characters and the animals, etc., etc., they're very reminiscent of Osamu Tezuka, of Shotaro, of those mangaka, as well as Disney influences. Disney influence was still very strong at this point, where anime was trying to figure out its own visual style. So what we end up with is a kind of a blend between, you know, what the medium was becoming of anime, and also of, you know, Disney influence. So visually it's a fascinating film. It's problematic, as I said, because it's unfinished, but it is actually a very nice looking film. The musical score is kind of what you'd expect for the time. You know, you have some epic kind of orchestral pieces, but it's kind of standard 60s kind of sounding music. It's not going to blow your socks off, but it does sound very nice. It suits the scenes where they are. So overall, what do I think of this film? It's a good film. You know, I enjoyed it a good bit, but it does have its issues. But overall, I would recommend it, not only because of the fact that it's historically significant. It's, you know, it's a directorial debut of like a very significant anime director, etc., etc., but simply because it is an enjoyable film. It's a fast watch, you know, it's 80 minutes, and it's an enjoyable film. Now, To talk about this film here, the edition I have is from Optimum, which is the UK distributor for Studio Ghibli anime, as well as several other films. Basically, this is pretty bare bones. There's only the Japanese language track for this, and the Japanese performances are very good. They're as you expected. There's no real kind of standout performances, but they all sound quite nice. I know an English version was released in the 80s in America that aired on, what was it? Was it the Turner Network? I can't remember. But that version isn't available here. It's just the Japanese version, and there's pretty much no extras. The trailer, but that's it. So it is a pretty bare bones release. I hear that, I'm just trying to recall, is it Animeworks have picked up Little Norse Prince in America? They're going to release it under, I think, the name Hall's Prince of the Sun. And they're going to have like the English with it as well as the Japanese. So that's definitely interesting. Beyond that, I don't know what else they'll have with it. They might have more extras. They might, have a Blu-ray release. I don't know. But it's interesting to look at. But for the moment, it's unavailable in America. I think you can watch on Hulu though. I know that. So anyway, overall, I would recommend this film. I think it's an enjoyable film. It's historically significant, etc., etc. And if you get the chance to watch it or to own it, I would recommend you get it. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.